So the reason we are actually creating our own shared translation service on top of the one provided by Ngx-Translate is because we want to make our code base really agnostic. So for example, should we switch to a different library, for example, not use Ngx-Translate, we don't need to actually start changing everywhere in the code base. All we need to touch is this section here. That's why we have it created as a shared translation service. All right, so first of all, we see this part here. We have three private member variables. The first one is the current language, and as you can see, it's a behavior subject. The other one is a list of available languages, which is an observable array, and the other one is the translate service. This one is the one provided by Ngx Translate, and these ones are the ones that we'll be using in the app, okay? All right, so this one, for example, it's used when we are actually getting the current language so that we can actually notify the user this is the current language that you are actually viewing the application in. For example, if we go to our app component, HTML, we open it side by side. This is what I mean. If we go all the way to the section where we have our list of languages, we see we have a class added, okay? The current language, we pipe through it because it's an observable, because ideally a behavior subject is an observable implicitly. Then we compare it with the key for the list of languages available. Then when we find a match, we give it a class of active. And then if we take a quick look at our CSS, we see that the active class is given a given style. It's bold and actually a given font size. So that's why we have it like that. Okay, I believe that's clear. So let's continue to the constructor part. The constructor, all it does is, first of all, it sets the default language to English. Then we set the list of available languages. And finally, this is the important part. We have this shared method. And this shared method, what it does is that it accepts a language, the active language. For our case, we are actually calling it the first time by setting the default language to English. But you see that it will be called whenever the user clicks to set the current language that they have selected on their UI. So what this does is that it will first of all set the next value of the current language to be the user selected language. Then this will be used on the UI as we have seen on the comparison, and anywhere else that the user may want to use it. And also we can actually, let's remove this part, it's a duplicate. And then also we actually have to say that we will now be using this language going forward. So last but not least is this section here. You notice that we are actually invoking the translate service from Ngx Translate and calling the instant property. All this does, it will actually translate the value provided to it. We don't need to pipe through anything because this makes it so easy for us to actually even use translations in component files in the TypeScript section, not only in the HTML section. So let's split this part actually into two, the app component and also the HTML itself, so that you can actually see. So I added something so simple here. If we start with our app component, HTML, we see something interesting. Like every section that we want to translate, we are piping it through the translate pipe. This pipe is what is provided by Ngx Translate. So if you want to translate in the HTML section, just use translate pipe directly from Ngx Translate. And this will be available if you have configured everything as we did from the start. All right. Okay. Now let's go all the way to this other part here. You notice this commented section and also this other part here. This part is actually calling this translate instant directly. So we comment this out, we comment it back in. We see it's the same behavior, only that the pattern used is different. You see? So if we have both of them, we will see like duplicate Swahili is the same behavior. So this cannot be so useful, yeah? Translate instance is not so useful in HTML. I just added it so that you can actually see the behavior is the same. So we keep the translate pipe. However, we see that we have this shout out section. The user will click on it, then an alert prompt will be displayed from the component. And what I mean by that is this. We click on this, we see a prompt, and the prompt says hello world because we have English. So let's change maybe to German, and then we click, we see a different one. Yeah. And then Swahili, we click, we see a different one. So let's take a look at how we have done this in our component. We open our component and we see something interesting. The user clicks on the send shoutout button. It will be called, and then we have a list of available shoutouts here. And the important part I want you to note is this section. Alert will accept a string, but our string, we have to actually modify it so that we can translate it in the language that we want. And that is where we actually call translate from our shared translation service, and it actually calls the instant property, which then returns the translated version. Okay. We have seen how we can actually use the translation both in the HTML as well as in the component. And in this case, we are just getting a random shoutout from here, and then we are just translating it and then displaying it to the user. So with that, I believe that's clear, and you have seen how easy it is to use Ngx-Translate in your Angular applications. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And as usual, always remember, you stop growing when you stop learning. And what you learn, go further and teach someone that you may grow together. Okay? All right. Until the next one.